back to watching Focus Thailand Evening News Primetime here. Now, the hot topic on many people's mind right now deals with the recent triple bombings that went off yesterday. We started talking about this issue a little bit yesterday. However, during tonight's Focus analysis, we'll take a deeper look at the situation, its implications on Thailand's reputation, as well as its effect on foreign relations. Joining us now to discuss this issue, as always, is our analyst, Paisal Sricharatchanya. สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีค่ะ
ครับ สวัสดีครับ
Glad to have you here in person tonight.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, reportedly, latest in the case, Thai police have arrested one of the culprits while he was trying to escape from Suvarnabhumi Airport. However, another culprit did manage to escape. In your opinion, what does this say about the Thai security forces? And do you think the fact that they let the culprit escape will have any effect on the country's reputation?
I think it is probably not a very serious issue in light of the fact that Thailand has always been an open country, you see. I mean, you have spies from different sides, walking around, brushing shoulders all the time. I mean, you go to places, entertainment places in Bangkok, for instance. Like, I used to know for a fact that, spies from the Russian side, the KGB, the CIAs.
Right.
I mean, they brushed shoulder, they drank, beer together in the same bars, Pat Pong area for a long, long time. So I think in light of this traditionally open nature of the Thai society, I mean, it's going to be very, very difficult to ensure very tight security, you see. So I think they made, a fairly good move by arresting at least one of them in the process of, the guy trying to flee the country. Okay, so they caught one, then they let another one flee the country, so there you are. I think that if Thailand were to continue to maintain this open door policy, inviting all foreign visitors to Thailand, then it's going to be very, very difficult to maintain the Thai security at the airports.
Now, speaking about how Thailand is just an open country just now, another issue that has come up is the future of Thailand and its national security. Now, will this incident portray Thailand as a haven for foreign terrorism, since Thailand is already on the gray list for money laundering, and the fact that it's very easy for tourists to enter and leave the country?
Again, I mean, this is probably one of the weak points of Thailand, but it's the price that we have to pay if the country wants to continue this open policy. I don't think it's possible to turn back, because this open door policy has been there since historical times. I mean, you go back to historical times since, say, the Sukhothai era, for instance. I mean, we always open our doors to foreign, traders, foreign visitors, from the east, from China, from Japan, from the west, from the Western Europe, and much later, from the U.S., from North America. So I think that in light of this traditional open door policy, I don't think it's possible to go back. And again, I mean, this has become a heaven for both tourists and also tourists. But then the good thing about all this is that, they just use Thailand as a sanctuary. And that up until now, we haven't had any serious terrorism incidents in Thailand. That perhaps, a lot of terrorist suspects have been coming in and going out for a long time without we knowing it. And it's going to be quite difficult, again, as I said before, in light of this open door policy. Now, if they continue to use Thailand as just a sanctuary, then I think that is something which we can probably, it's an evil which we probably have to tolerate. I think much depends on the policy of the Thai government. Now, the recent policy by the Thai Foreign Ministry, the Thai government, to recognize the Palestinian Liberation Organization, for instance, as an independent state, I think that is a very, very clever move, and I think that that will serve, to ensure this sort of neutral stance, which has been always the policy of Thailand, and I think that will perhaps, protect us from any outright acts of terror in Bangkok and other larger cities in Thailand.
Well, right after a string of explosions in the heart of the city yesterday, many have jumped to conclusion it was definitely an act of terrorism, while many have even linked to the bomb incident in India and Georgia this week. What's your take on this?
Well, people are quick to jump to conclusion, The Israeli ambassador to Bangkok was quick to draw a direct connection, between the attempted assassinations of diplomats, Israeli diplomats, in India and also in Georgia. So he was quick to jump to the conclusion that this is the same thing, the same network. I would say that at this point in time, I am prepared to go along with initial findings from the police, and these findings suggest that these bombers, they have planned to target individuals, and that it is probably correct to assume further that the targets are just individuals, and that the targets are not masses of people. The targets are not big buildings and all. So on that basis, I don't think that these bombers were targeting acts of mass terrorism, and that at the very best they were targeting assassination attempts against certain individuals. But whether those targeted individuals are Israeli diplomats or not, I think is something which we have to wait for further verification from the Thai police.
So this definitely have nothing to do with the terrorist warning against Thailand earlier this year.
I doubt if there's any direct connection between this latest, series of, I would say, minor blasts, on Sukhumvit 71 yesterday, with the earlier warnings, issued by, first of all by the U.S. Embassy here, and followed by the many other embassies, Western embassies in particular. I doubt if there's any direct connection there, because those warnings, I understand, were prompted by intelligence suggesting, plots of mass terrorism acts, which I would say are quite different from what I explained just now. That it seems, at least from the initial findings, that the targets of these bombers, these Iranian bombers, don't seem to be, mass, terror targets, So I doubt if there's any direct connection there.
Now, in terms of investor confidence, now we saw yesterday that the Thai stock market saw huge drops in shares, even though today the market is recovering significantly. Now, how do you think this incident will have an effect upon investors' confidence, and will they affect these short-term or long-term?
At the end of today, I think it's become clear that any negative impact from this blast yesterday is quite limited. Now, yesterday there was, I would say, some knee-jerk reaction, by stock market investors in the afternoon after they learned about this the blast on Sukhumvit 71. So the market, plunged quite steeply. But recovered somewhat at the close of the trading day. Today, the market bounced back, very strongly. The stock index dropped by 10 points yesterday. Index, bounced back, actually more than made up, the loss yesterday. The index closed today plus 20 points. That was a plus of 1.8%. So that's twice, the 10-point loss yesterday. But then, this is partly because of the global, very positive sentiments, from the different other markets around the region and also other parts of the world. But be that as it may, I think that the fact that the market bounced back very strongly today show that investor confidence has not been that much affected by this, I would say, small blast. The incident was quite shocking that it took place, in 71, which is part of in the Bangkok. 71, mind you, was totally dry during the recent flooding, so it's part of in the Bangkok, and that especially scenes of that Iranian bomber who was injured after one of the bombs he threw, bounced back and blew up right beside him, severing his legs, So those images were quite shocking when they were splashed around the world on the different TV networks. But after that, I think that again, as the stock market index showed today, the impact was quite limited.
Well, the government, especially the Prime Minister, has declined to speak much about the issue. Do you think that would be an appropriate act, given that they will be responsible for security of the country and also the investor confidence, tourism sector, everything?
It is probably sensible on her part, to speak as little as possible, because I suppose that the more she say, the worse situation may become. So I think she's quite sensible to to say little. And of course, this is something which involves the security authorities.
Right.
It is their responsibility to get down to the bottom of this whole thing and come up with a clear-cut explanation as to what actually transpired. To verify as to whether it is indeed true that these Iranians were targeting, to assassinate Israeli diplomats or not. So I think that it's quite right for her to say little. And of course, we talked just now about the limited impact on the stock market. I think the impact on tourism would be probably more serious than the stock investment, because again, you have these foreign missions in Bangkok, reviving, the travel advisories for the nationals, which were just revoked recently, after those earlier warnings, from the U.S. Embassy about possible, terrorist acts, here. But having said this, I must add that the warnings, have not really been addressed, as again, as the UK ambassador pointed out to this program earlier, that they posted that travel advisory, but they have not raised the level of warning. So that shows that again, they were not overly disturbed by this latest incident.
Now, there's also been rumors that a Thai woman might have also been involved. 34-year-old Da Klong Dan, who lives opposite from the house where the first explosion went off, is reported to have been seen entering and exiting the house many times. Now, what do you make of this rumor?
I wouldn't want to pay too much weight on that. It is quite common that foreigners coming to Bangkok, to Thailand, be they from the west, from the east, from the Middle East. In the process of coming here, especially if they come here often, and in the process of their stay here, they would get to know, local female companions. So I think there isn't really that much behind this Thai lady. I think that she should be kept out from this.
Well, now many have pointed fingers to foreign terrorists. How would that affect relations between Thailand and other countries, especially Israel and Iran?
I don't think there will be any serious problem insofar as Thailand's relations with foreign countries are concerned. Because again, if Thailand were to continue to maintain a neutral policy vis-a-vis all the major powers around the world, and try to strike a proper balance, like our ancestors have done so since historical times. I'm sure that Thailand can survive, in the middle of all this, conflict. Now we are dealing with, a growing, intensifying conflict between Israeli on the one side and the Iranian on the other side. Because of, partly because of the, the nuclear program, which is, being undertaken by the Iranians. Of course, that speech, Iran against the U.S. on the one side, plus Israel also. So I think that that's intensifying the conflict. And so long as Thailand were to maintain, a neutral stance vis-a-vis all this conflict, as well as other conflicts, then I think that we can survive quite in the same manner as we have survived since historical times.
So do you think this is not as a big of a scale, the incident that happened?
I don't think so. I think that it is not uncommon that Bangkok or Thailand, has become sort of, an operating ground for these foreign intelligence operatives or foreign terror suspects, involving Israeli. The incident yesterday, has brought to mind right away of another very, very, shocking incident way back, since. I would say in the 70s, when some Islamist extremists belonging to the so-called Black September movement, they actually seized the Israeli embassy on Soi Lang Sut at the time, and took a number of Israeli diplomats hostage. That was a long time ago. But again, through some very, very capable diplomacy negotiations by the government at the time. If the people, my generation would recall, I'm not sure about your generation, would recall that at the time, The late Chricharatchanya was the chief negotiator. I mean, after some very tense negotiation, we managed to get them out, send them off a plane, and defuse that situation, you see. So it's not uncommon that Thailand has become sort of an operating ground for some of these, extremist movements. And at the time, that was far more serious than this time because they attacked the embassy and they took the diplomats hostage, But even under such a very tense and very serious circumstances, the Thai authorities managed to defuse the situation. So I think that this, by comparison, this is nothing, this is not that serious.
Well, there are many more serious issues to look about, especially the government's flood prevention projects.
I'm sure.
Right? Well, we'll talk about that later, but tonight we're running out of time. Thank you for your time tonight here, right at our studio.